All righty. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's Small Business Boot Camp. I'm Robert Theobald, Small Business Ombudsman and Vice President of Small Business Services here at the Arizona Commerce Authority. Glad to have you with us today. We like to start off our sessions by asking everybody to put in the chat where you are tuning in from. We like to see where from throughout the state and sometimes throughout the country, and even occasionally internationally we have attendees. So post up in the chat where you tuned in from. So we've got Anthem, Mesa, Phoenix, Yuma, Scottsdale, Glendale, Phoenix, North Scottsdale, Phoenix, Sedona, Carefree, Yuma. Excellent. Flagstaff, we got from north to south to west of the state. Glad to have everybody with us today. Again, if you're just joining, please post in the chat where you tuned in from. But we're going to go ahead and jump into this session and start moving along. So for those that are new to the boot camp, we like to start by thanking all of our community partners. We could not do these webinars without our partners, their time, their effort, and their expertise. They are giving back to the community, and we appreciate that very much. They're all great partners of ours. Also, if you're new to the boot camp, the Small Business Boot Camp is designed to help small businesses prepare, plan, and grow. And not only is it our Tuesday morning webinar at 9 a.m. that we're all on right now, but we also do some workshops, lunch and learns, and special sessions to help complement it. And we'll talk about one of those lunch and learns here in a little bit. But they're all available to you to view and participate in. And one of the great things we do with all of these webinars is we record them and we post them in our content library. And the content library has over 300 plus recorded webinars. We're actually close to about 360 now that you can access at any time. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen there's 7 different categories you can select to help narrow down the content so you can find the topic or session you're looking for. Or if you have questions on which one may best fit your need, feel free to reach out to me directly and I can guide you to a few different sessions that may be helpful to you. But it is a great resource. Again, it's available at no cost. You can just access it on the bottom of the bootcamp webpage, and we'll post a link for that in the chat. The ACA also has a number of other programs to help support small business. Here's just 6 of them, but you can find all of them on our website, azcommerce.com/programs. You can find these and many more as we expand our support to small businesses and businesses throughout the state. One of the key programs we always like to talk about is our small business checklist. And we do so because this is designed to help entrepreneurs that are getting started and also businesses that are looking to expand, whether coming into the state or going into other parts of the state, to help them identify the commonly requested licensing, registration, and compliance needs at the local, state, and federal levels. So depending on the type of business, you may have some federal compliance requirements or state compliance things that you need to look at, and the checklist will help identify if the communities where you're going to operate require a business license, and much more. It's an amazing resource, and if you scan that QR code, it'll take you to the checklist, and you can access it there. And then we also encourage everyone, when you check it out, to also test out our virtual assistant, Sally. Sally will pop up on the checklist screen, and you can ask Sally questions and get not as detailed of answers, but you can get some great answers. And then we also have, since today's session is going to be on AI, we actually have a generative AI option within our virtual assistant, Sally, to ask some of those and get some generative AI responses based on all the content in the checklist. It's a really cool program. So check that out, and please leave Sally feedback on how it goes. We're always looking for feedback to help Sally be better. So with that, let's look at some upcoming sessions that we have. We've got a great lineup scheduled throughout the end of the year and into 2025. But the next 3 weeks are right here. So please join us for these. But we have another, as I mentioned, Lunch and Learn coming up. We have on October 17th, so on Thursday of this week, we have the new Capital Access Credit Line programs for small businesses. This is a new program by the Small Business Administration, and we are going to have them on this webinar, on this Lunch and Learn, to actually talk to everybody about this new program. So instead of me trying to explain it, we went out and got the SBA from our Phoenix office here. They're going to be on with us to explain this new program and how you can access it. So we're really excited to partner with them. And so please join us for that on Thursday from 11 a.m. till 1 p.m. And now we're going to jump into today's session. We have our great speaker, Eloy Indigoyan, with us. Eloy's been on the boot camps with us previously. He's very knowledgeable on e-commerce and other things, and he's diving into how AI can make things more efficient. So we're excited to have him with us for that. So Eloy, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let you jump in. And while we're transitioning, I just want to remind everybody that at the bottom of your screen, you'll find a Q&A button along with the chat button. For questions, please put those in the Q&A. It helps us keep those separated from chat information back and forth, and that way we can address those questions either during the presentation or at the end. So we'll have some time to reach out and go through some of those questions. So please post your questions in the Q&A. But with that, Eloy, it is all yours.
Cool. Thank you so much for the great introduction, Robert. I'm just putting the screen up real quick. Hope everybody can see it. Truly appreciate the opportunity. Again, Arizona Commerce Authority, thank you so much. Thank you for all you do for small to mid-sized entrepreneurs and companies and businesses in the Arizona area. I know I'm going to be taking a look at some of those classes coming up in the next couple of weeks as well too. So again, thanks for everybody for the kind introduction. As Robert mentioned, my name is Eloy Indigoyan, and I work for Spread the Love. The company is a challenger food brand. We sell organic peanut butter, almond butter, and jam on the Amazon platform and on the Walmart platform as well. We have a website, as I mentioned in previous webinars as well, spreadthelovefoods.com. I also run a consultancy that helps out challenger brands grow through technology. So in this experience with Spread the Love, I've been able to leverage a lot of my skill set and understanding of how to run a company, a very small company with, a small amount of resources from a financial end, from a human capital end, and just from like a general resources end of things. So we really needed, as we've been building out this brand, I've been with the company over 5 years, we really needed to figure out a way how we can leverage technology to help us scale. So that's really what I'm going to be jumping into this morning. We'll explore a lot more around artificial intelligence and some tools that you can use to drive your business forward. I'm sure a lot of you are probably familiar with artificial intelligence, with AI, as Robert mentioned earlier. It's coming into different parts of our personal lives quite a bit, whether it's a chat GPT helping you plan a vacation, whether it's helping you with homework for your kids, whether it's helping you figure out how to make some food at home really quick. I know I use it a lot when I get home late from work and I just want to make something quick. And here's what I have in my fridge. Can you let me know what I can make with these items? Or even helping pick out an outfit. I've had that support from a chat GPT side of things. And all these are really good examples of how AI can make us more efficient with our time and in turn lower our internal costs. And as I always say, as my grandfather used to say too, time is not free. And as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner, or a mid-sized business owner, obviously we know time is something that is our most precious resource. So I'm going to jump into the evolution of efficiency. So while I was preparing for this presentation, I sort of had this light bulb moment, and it was actually in the last couple of weeks, as I did build out a pretty good framework. But I said to myself, how can I talk about AI? I know we talk about it in a personal context with ChatGPT, but what about for companies? And what examples in the last 100 years have we seen processes be broken down into smaller, quicker tasks, leading to greater efficiency and thus greater profitability. So Ford is a great example, obviously the Henry Ford assembly line. So I wanted to put an example from roughly 100 years ago, but then I also wanted to put an example from now, right? And something that we actually purchase quite a bit. So I chose the Ford example because they revolutionized manufacturing for the auto industry, breaking car production down into smaller, repeatable steps. Each worker had a specific task, drastically reducing the production time from about 12 hours to about an hour and 30 minutes, which is absolutely incredible. Obviously, that sped up a lot of things in the auto industry here in the United States in particular, and built a foundation for our society for years to come. By automating the repetitive tasks, Ford made that process a lot faster, more consistent, and ultimately more profitable. Fast forward to today, I'm sure everybody on this call has purchased something on Amazon, probably in the last month or so as well. We're seeing the same kind of innovation at a company like Amazon. Robots now work side by side alongside human employees to pick, pack, and ship some of our favorite products, including Spread the Love's naked organic peanut butter. We wouldn't have been able to scale up our small business if we hadn't been sold through the Amazon platform. But it wasn't just getting exposure to their customers, it was also getting exposure to their fulfillment network, where you can buy our peanut butter last night at 8 p.m. and actually get it in the morning, this morning at 7 a.m. Right? We wouldn't be, as a small business, we wouldn't be able to process anything that quickly with our partners. But thankfully, we have a massively incredible partner in Amazon. So we've been able to leverage their fulfillment centers, their fulfillment processes, and their technologies to help us scale. So that was one example there, in my opinion, of how are we leveraging technology as a small business, as a self-funded business, as most businesses are, and most small businesses are in the United States. But this automation really allows Amazon to handle massive volumes of orders. So not just a great organic peanut butter, also a flat screen TV, also clothes, for example. And now they're getting into the healthcare space as well. So that's going to be incredibly impactful in the long term. But it ensures that products get to customers quickly. And just like Ford's assembly line, Amazon's automation reduces the need for manual labor in repetitive tasks, freeing up human workers to really handle a lot more complex roles. If anybody has any questions or any ideas or any thoughts on some of these opinions that I'm bringing to you, please feel free to drop those in the chat function, or excuse me, in the Q&A function. That'd be super helpful. I'd love to get to things as I continue talking. Similarly, for today's AI tools that we have in the marketplace, there is a lot of opportunity there for both a small business, a mid-sized business, and again, to pull us away from those chat GPT examples, because there are a lot of manual tasks that we do, even though we're sitting behind a computer screen, right? I always hear about manual labor, and that's whether doing something in your yard, that's doing some actual like handiwork or something like that. But in my opinion, manual labor can still be labor that's done on the computer, because you're just doing the same thing over and over and over again. So we utilize AI to create a lot of automation around these administrative tasks, such as invoicing, such as order processing, such as tracking orders as well too. So we're able to really take a lot of these smaller manageable processes and allow our business, Spread the Love, and other businesses as well that I've supported from a consulting side of things, to run faster and more efficiently. So those tedious, time-consuming tasks that we tend to put on the lower level employees, or the employees that are just starting out, as they grow and as they develop into more impactful employees in the long term, we're able to shift some of those tasks away from them so we don't lose them as employees either. I want to jump into here the 6 drivers. So from streamlining to automation. So if I were to come to a company or a business to really speak to them about where can this be impactful, where can AI be impactful for their business, we know where it can be impactful for our personal life. In my opinion, these 6 areas and these 6 drivers are things that we need to look at both internally as a team to make sure it aligns with where we are from a business standpoint. Because sometimes it does, and sometimes you have that internal want to be able to do a project like this, or sometimes it might not be the right timing. So I think it's important to really just have a good understanding and a good high level overview of where it can help support. If there is areas of opportunity for it to support from a project standpoint, it makes sense. If there's not at the time, and maybe there's only one or two of these, then maybe it doesn't make sense from a shorter term standpoint. But over time, you'll be able to see more of an opportunity. So the first thing I like to talk about and look at is efficiency, right? Are there a lot of manual processes in the steps that you're doing from a purchase order standpoint? Are there a lot of inventory management? Are people exporting a lot of spreadsheets to Excel and doing their own analysis there and then sending out reports at the end of every month or at the end of every quarter or at the end of every year, right? That analysis is super important from a business side of things, but can you, if somebody's exporting it from your enterprise resource planning tool, your ERP tool, or just from an inventory management tool, and then modifying it, then that's really not the true information that's coming from that tool. The other person is going in there and perhaps manipulating some of the information in their favor, or just perhaps trying to tell a different story than what's actually happening. So that also could be wasted time. That also could just be the general manual processes as well. Obviously, as a small business owner, it's hard to find good people at the salaries that we can afford to pay them. The average time to fill a job opening these days is over a month and a half, and a longer horizon of leaving that role unfilled could cost a company up to $14,000 per year, according to the website gohire.com. So by automating those processes, such as hiring and such as scheduling interviews, even things like that on the HR side of things, it could help speed up the recruitment process and reduce financial losses due to, vacant positions and so on and so forth. From an engagement side of things as well, it's super important to really have that back and forth with your employees, making sure that they're staying happy, which I think, especially nowadays where people are hopping around job to job, things like that, employee satisfaction is basically the number one thing on our mind here at Spread the Love, to make sure everybody we have is happy and also engaged and wants to stay with us and wants to tell people that it's a great place to work. As I mentioned before, on the hiring front too, speed, it could take quite a bit to hire people, and that could end up costing us quite a bit as well. Productivity, super important. Automation, that in my opinion is really one of the bigger factors. It makes us more productive, right? It can boost our productivity by at least up to 20%. Sometimes in certain cases with certain certain tools for certain technologies, it can be even more than that. And it's something that has impacted me personally when I talk about the journey from a Spread the Love standpoint as well. So I want to jump into really where we experienced the inefficiencies here at Spread the Love, and sort of the challenges that we had over the last couple of years. We did very well throughout COVID. We lost a lot of our business. We lost a lot of our food service business. So as I said before, we sell spreads. We sell peanut butter, almond butter, cashew butter, and a raspberry jam and a berry jam as well. We lost a lot of the food service business. So think hotels, think restaurants, hospitality companies, and so on and so forth. But the e-commerce side of our business, really, really, really expanded pretty quickly throughout COVID. As we've developed this new business model into sort of who we are in 2024 and beyond, we realized that a lot of those technology projects that we had on our roadmap in 2020 got pushed to the side. I only thought it was going to be about a year. It was about a 4-year push to the side, right? But as we've been trying to scale more so in the last 12 to 18 months, we knew we couldn't handle order processing on a manual basis. I knew I couldn't create every single customer invoice one by one. I knew I couldn't send tracking numbers and that just general troubleshooting and that communication to customers one by one by one. It made sense when we were a truly like a smaller business, but as we grew and as we expanded, it took me just as much time to process an order for $1,000 as it did for an order that's $100,000 order, right? And then at the end of the day, when you're trying to create an understanding of where your time is spent, is it spent on value-added tasks, or is it spent on just these sort of mundane tasks that obviously incredibly important, but at the end of the day, somebody of my level, as we expanded the team and as we hired more people, should not be focused on those tasks. So the two main sort of things that we were looking to fix were I was making mistakes and people on my team were making mistakes just because the order volume was increasing. So there's more of an opportunity for just fat fingers or something like that to happen. And then also when a purchase order would come in, I wouldn't catch every single purchase order. I would do my best, right? But at the end of the day, I still had to go home at a certain time. I still had to have lunch at a certain time. We still had to, wake up in the morning and try to not work as much on the weekends. Although a small business is pretty much a 7-day job, but there was a higher risk, and the risks ended up getting bigger and bigger and bigger because the purchase orders were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And as I mentioned before, these were time-consuming, resource-intensive tasks that were very manual, from an inventory check, from a shipment tracking, from a follow-up side of things to make sure things were where they were supposed to be. And that could just take significant amount of time, effort, and sort of lower our productivity internally. And then also just from an employee satisfaction standpoint, it doesn't make people super happy to do the same thing over and over every single day. And there's no light at the end of that tunnel. So I knew something had to be done and I knew something had to be changed. So I said, where can I look? Right, to find these types of tools. And thankfully, I don't want to say thankfully we waited, 4 years, but I don't think these types of technologies existed 4 years ago. I'm sure they did in some capacity, but it wasn't as impactful as it would have been to our business as they are right now. So the example that I want to give is Zach, right? He's our senior operations manager here at Spread the Love. As I mentioned before, a lot of manual information, having to go in there, a lot of exporting to Excel spreadsheets, which I'm sure a lot of us know quite a bit about. The tracking numbers weren't being updated in the right place. He'd put a purchase order number in one place and then the tracking number for a different one, and then we'd have to send that out manually. And the customer would get upset and say, wait a minute, why is my order going to Seattle when this should be going to Chicago? Inconsistent inventory updates. You have inventory at different warehouses, so there's no one true, like, single source of truth that you could really bring together to really get a good understanding of what you need, which then slows down your purchasing timeline as well from a procurement standpoint. Time-consuming invoicing. Once the orders were delivered, manually invoicing everybody, seeing who pays by credit card, seeing who pays by bank transfer, seeing who still sends check and snail mail, making sure all the boxes were checked off the right way in QuickBooks. All of that manual time-consuming stuff took quite a bit. And then also just from a general, like, that person is lacking that strategic focus. So all of the inefficiencies above, the manual data entry, the order tracking discrepancies, the inconsistent inventory updates, and the time-consuming invoicing, that makes that employee not very satisfied, not very likely to stay a very long period of time, and also not very likely to tell their friends, on a Saturday or on a Thursday happy hour or something like that, hey, I actually enjoy my job. And as I mentioned before, as a small business, when we hire somebody, like, we can't get those things wrong, right? Maybe if you do an internship program or something like that, at least you could test a few people out and see what ends up being the fit. But we were such a small business with no external funding, with no real room to make a mistake that large. And especially nowadays with, people being in office, people being working remotely and things like that, we wanted to make sure that everybody internally here was set up to succeed, because the more that person or the more those people on our team, both internally and externally, because this also made our 3PL partners' lives quite a bit easier, because it meant less email from us and more focus in their system as well, which connects with our new system. All of those things that I mentioned previously really jump into that lack of strategic focus. So we wanted to get rid of those inefficiencies for Zach and pull Zach away from handling the repetitive tasks over and over again. So take that time from building that car from, almost 12 hours or whatever that number was before to like an hour and a half, right? And there's still going to be that manual focus and that manual check. Zach still needs to go in there and make sure that the pricing is accurate, right? And still needs to check every order every day to see where things are at, and still needs to have an understanding of where his inventory is, and still needs to make sure our customers are paying on time. So it's not like you're completely getting rid of this and you're saying, okay, totally move on to something else. It's we're getting rid of those manual repetitive tasks, which in the bigger picture, in the grand scheme of things, if we want to scale up and get bigger in this economy, the only way we were going to be able to support this was with technology, similar to what Ford did back in the day and similar to what Amazon's doing right now as well too. Now, this was all great, right? Like I had a good understanding of where we were. I knew what we needed to change, but I didn't really know how I can leverage artificial intelligence and identify where the manual gaps were in my current workflow. So, in my experience, and here at Spread the Love, we did this exercise to pinpoint where our technology could make the most impact. And I encourage you to do the same for your business, or feel free to reach out to me and I could walk you through this internal audit that we did, a process audit. I took a screenshot here of a very high level sample of how we did it for our business. So we broke down the typical manual workflow for our purchase orders, for our shipment, and then for our invoicing and our accounting, which also involved that shipment tracking, sort of in that shipment category and that shipment swim lane. So each of the areas involved several manual steps. So I put that person there, this person icon over here to say, okay, here's where the manual part is. Can it be changed, right? I didn't say, yes, this needs to be changed, this has to be taken away. I said, can it be changed? Can technology really do that for us? And each of the areas, as I mentioned before, involved several manual steps, all of which took up Zach's time and all of which introduced the opportunity for him to make a mistake. So, for example, the manual entry of purchase orders and tracking information into different systems slowed down our operations, right? While invoicing by hand leaves room for invoices to be getting there late. So if the shipment gets there at 9 a.m. on a Friday, and then I don't send out that invoice, or Zach doesn't send out that invoice till Saturday morning, we'll lose that time, right? And we as a small business need the money as soon as possible. So we want that clock to start ticking as soon as possible. These repetitive tasks, resource-intensive processes are exactly where automation can come in and save time and reduce errors and improve efficiency for small businesses like ours. I see a couple things coming in either in the chat or the Q&A. How do we make sure, okay, I'm going to read this one out. How do we make sure that the vendor and customers are aligned to see the communication all the way from initial to end? We do not have control over vendor or customer processing. I can tell you how we did it. So the first thing we did, as I'm showing you here, is this sort of audit process of our manual processes. So first we said, okay, let's focus on what we can control, right? As you mentioned before, and as I've heard before, in previous conversations, there are a lot of systems that our vendors use and that our 3PL partners use that we can't plug into, right? Or there's just nobody on the other side from a communication standpoint that can actually help us work through this process. So I definitely hear what you're saying. I think it depends on a case-by-case basis. What we did here internally at Spread the Love was we communicated what we were trying to do, how we were trying to make our lives easier for our 3PL partners. We were manually emailing people packing slips. We were manually emailing people invoices, and that just clogs up their inbox. And then their employees, who was our account manager for our 3PL, which I'll use the example, is hearing from us nonstop from 9 o'clock in the morning or 8:30 in the morning till about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's not a good use of their time either, right? Their side wants us to be in their system. So we had to find a partner that could create the integrations, even if they didn't exist currently, who can create the integrations with the partners that we're working with. So we needed to find a partner who is willing and able to really help us along the way from a process standpoint and from a technology standpoint as well. So as I mentioned before, I encourage you to do an audit of just sort of the manual processes, and then you'll be able to see what can connect in or what other tools you're using, excuse me, to send invoices to customers, or what other tools you're using to manually track things from a shipment, and or what other tools you're using from a 3PL side of things, and then maybe put an icon of that tool. So I would put the icon of Extensive, which is the 3PL inventory tool that we're using, that our partner is using. I'd put a QuickBooks icon over here. So then you'll be able to see which part of the process that other technology is actually being utilized. because maybe you can't do it for everything. Maybe you can only do it for purchase orders because that's where you have the most control. Maybe you can't do it for shipments, for example. Maybe you can do it for invoicing. I will say the partner that we worked with, and I'm going to jump into sort of what that tool is called and how you guys can get in touch with them or reach out to me and I can put you in touch with them. They have been incredibly supportive of what's the integration? Have they ever heard of it before? And if they haven't, they're willing to reach out to them and sort of connect with them and communicate them on what the vision would look like. Whether or not your other partners, your third party partners will sort of support that is a different story. But it does help to have that initial conversation where it's, hey, we're doing this to make all of our lives easier. We're not doing this to add another system in place to complicate things. So I'm going to flip over to the next slide. So the tool that we're using is called DOS. It's our AI-powered automation solution. It's an incredibly great tool for a small challenger brand like ours. They've done projects with mid-sized companies. They're working on proposals with very large companies as well too. The best thing I like about this specific tool is that from an integration standpoint, right? So to answer that Q&A question, it does integrate with a variety of tools out there that small to mid-sized businesses use quite a bit, and even some large enterprise customers use as well too. It doesn't disrupt the current workflow though. It works around the workflow because we are doing that initial audit process of where can this tool fit in and where does this tool maybe not fit in because we have our own internal things or internal specific things that we need to focus on and that we still want a human touch on at the end of the day. For example, shipping fees for Spread the Love. Some customers get charged shipping fees because they get different pricing. Other customers don't get charged shipping fees. So when we automatically create an order from that purchase order that comes in, those shipping fees are not usually included by the customer, right? But we need to go in there and manually put those shipping fees in. So that's still that manual process that we wanted to oversee here at Spread the Love without disrupting the current workflow of having an automation from sales order to shipment to invoicing. The key features of the tool, in my experience at least, there are a variety that we don't actually utilize as a team because, as I said before, it doesn't touch every single process just yet. AI-driven order processing, automated invoicing and payment tracking, real-time inventory management, and it automates that customer communication and all those updates. If you're on Shopify, for example, that's a great tool, right? For if you want to build a direct-to-consumer business, it sends you your tracking number, which most people like to see after they buy something, right? For non-Shopify customers, for us, which is a lot of the wholesale customers, we used to have to manually email them the tracking information. And it didn't matter the order size. If somebody was ordering $1,000 or $100,000 or $1 million on one PO, everybody wants to see where their items are. So we used to have to manually do that. Now, using this new tool, we do not have to do that manually. We just click one button and then click generate invoice and then click issue invoice and then boom, that tracking number, as long as it's updated on our end, right, inside the tool, is going to send that information out to the customer. And that, I can tell you, has saved us a significant amount of time and helped us retain that top talent here internally at Spread the Love because it's eliminating those manual time-consuming tasks, which could slow that person down. So instead of focusing on that repetitive data entry, we can now focus on projects that more align with our strengths and interests here internally at Spread the Love. That being said, when a shipping fee needs to be on an invoice, we still have to manually do that work, right? I am not saying by any means that it's going to get rid of anything, 100%. So I want to show you sort of the tool in action on our end. So here's the screenshot of how the tool looks, right? I just took a screenshot here to show you how it can be separated out. Looks like Excel in my opinion. So we were doing this all previously in Excel in one massive order spreadsheet, which I had about 10,000 or 20,000 rows, which I can maybe show you at the end of the presentation to show you what it used to look like. That being said, we now do this inside the DOS tool, which again has been super helpful for a brand like Spread the Love. So we're able to see our purchase orders here. We're able to see when the purchase order was actually created on our end. We're able to see who the customers are. We're able to see what the next action is. Do we need to send the invoice? Has the inventory been received? I can separate it out. If you have customers around the world, if you have customers around the United States, we could separate it out by that. If you have wholesale customers, non-wholesale customers, you could separate it out by that. But all you would do is basically click this sales order. And obviously, this is a larger project, right? You typically will take a lot of your existing customer accounts. They call them sales accounts, your existing product catalog, your existing locations, and then you share this with the team over there, and they're able to upload all this and develop this into your tool, into your streamlined tool. They recently introduced this Slack feature here, so I don't know if anybody here is on Slack, but I know it's something that doesn't always integrate with certain things, so they kind of built out their own one inside the tool where then we could talk about specific orders. I could ask people about specific purchase orders, where things are, do we have enough inventory, where it's shipping to, the address, and so on and so forth. This syncs, so all you need to do is create this sales order in the tool, and then it would sync out with Extensive if that's the fulfillment tool that you're using. ShipStation, for example, if that's the fulfillment tool that you're using. Shopify, if that's the fulfillment tool that you're using. So you don't need to do two things in two separate places. You're just doing that one thing from an order processing side of things and then submitting that in, and then that's flowing through. They also have an integration with Gmail as well, where it can ingest the purchase order if the purchase order comes in through your Gmail account and then automatically populate the information here. Obviously, you'd still need somebody to approve it just to make sure that the pricing's right and the quantities are right and you have enough inventory. But that's something where it would take that step even away from creating the sales order, which we still do here manually at Spread the Love because we don't have that integration set up. We're not on the Gmail platform, we're on the Outlook platform, and it's still something we kind of want to manually oversee. It is hard too from a change management side of things. So just take away everything that you were doing and the process and overnight almost and say, trust this system. That being said, we did that about 4 to 5 months ago, and it really has impacted us, just as I mentioned before, from an employee satisfaction standpoint, and also from freeing up our time to focus on more strategic activities, which has actually generated more sales for the business. We've been able to open quite a bit more wholesale accounts over the last 4.5, 5 months than we had in the 4.5, 5 months prior as well. So this is what the sales order page looks like. It is something that can be taught pretty easily too. If you have people internally on your team that you want to teach them the system or we'd want to teach them the system, it is something that can be taught very easily, in my opinion, because the layout is very similar to Excel, which I'm sure a lot of you are using from an inventory management side of things. And then as I get into the finance and accounting. So you have all these great purchase orders and you have all this great inventory management and all this great information in here, but how do you utilize it? How do you put it in action, right? You're able to create these finance dashboards to have a better idea of what revenue you're doing, whether it's week over week. You have a better idea of your COGS too. You can input specific goals as well from a sales standpoint. Obviously, you're breaking everything down here by SKU or by vendor, by multi-pack. So you're able to parse through a lot of that information and then really get a better understanding of what products you're selling, where you're selling to, what the zip codes are. And then once you put in all your invoices as well, on the purchasing side of things, you're able to get a good idea of your expenses. And then forecasting becomes a lot easier from an inventory management end of things. So again, increasing the opportunity for efficiency, not just in the operational end of things, not just in the inventory management side of things, but also your CFO or your controller or your finance team, whether it's an analyst or whatnot. You don't need to sort of export all that into Excel now and have that analyst, whether it's junior, senior, or controller or CFO, play with all that information. You're able to play with the information on the actual tool, or then you're not spending time manipulating information in Excel, and it's all just in this one place. So as I mentioned before, from a Spread the Love side of things, order tracking has been really instrumental and really game-changing for us here. So this basically just shows that same page previously, the sales order page, but once we create the shipment and the tracking number gets in here, instead of us having to manually go to FedEx every day or UPS.com and so on and so forth, the information just gets uploaded here, and then there's a link. And then if I want to see where it is, or I had a customer reach out with a question, I would just click on the link and then it brings me to that UPS tracking link page instead of manually copying and pasting 30 tracking numbers every morning and then pasting it into FedEx.com and seeing where certain things are and then saying, okay, that one got there, that one didn't, that one's in route, that one's going to be late. Who do I need to reach out to? We're able to just sort of do that in this one specific tool. I see another question in mass retail kind of business where there's increase in privilege because some customers having to input their needs. Yeah, and are there customizable tools pick out these exceptions? Walmart, Home Depot went back to staff doing scanning as opposed to have them. How do we minimize them? So, as I mentioned before, this isn't a full-on robot, right? I don't know if anybody saw the Elon Musk thing where they were doing the self-driving cars the other day in Los Angeles, and they had the robots sort of walking around talking to people. And that was interesting because I looked into it a little bit more, and I was like, how can these robots actually have that level of, human interaction? And a lot of it was, partially it was a lot of just the pre-programmed answers that they had. They knew how to pour a drink. They knew how to do all that kind of stuff. But they were actually being recorded. And then there was somebody in a truck nearby being able to sort of go back and forth with those people. So that example is like, you will still need that human interaction and that human touch. Obviously, you need human beings to set all this up, right? And to leverage all these tools. But guess what? These tools they're not foolproof 100% of the time. So you still need to manage and troubleshoot that. But then from a general order side of things, you still need to you still need to manage that as well to make sure that the pricing is accurate. Because maybe some customers, for example, pricing increases, right? I actually reached out to them somewhat recently to say, hey, how do we increase prices? 2025 is coming up. I have a client out there who wants to increase prices. How do we go through that process, right? And it's just basically updating our price hook for by specific customer, as opposed to back in the day, I had to email everybody manually. I had to do a calendar invite to remind myself that the next time they sent a purchase order, that price had to change. Now, despite if they send us a purchase order and the price is not the price that we had increased it to, once I put it into my system, that price will manually adjust or automatically adjust on our end. I saw another question. Are those the amounts being spent or earned? I'm not sure that I follow that one. Are you just more saying from like a cost side of things? Like how much does something like this cost to implement? I will tell you, it's not the price of a NetSuite. It's not the price of like a Salesforce or anything like that. It's very manageable for small to mid-sized companies. They have a ton of support system on helping you go live in under a week or under 2 weeks. It's definitely something that I've in a previous life. So before the Spread the Loves and before all the e-commerce consulting that I've done, I was an ERP consultant for large financial institutions. Those projects can be quite massive. So you see another question. Oh, the totals on the right side, is that earnings? No, this is just a screenshot example. So this was basically just 550 units, and that was the sale, right? That was the whole price of the actual purchase order. So just using this as screenshots for examples, but you can separate it out and you can add custom fields. So everybody says, well, this looks great, but my business is unique, right? You're able to customize this to whatever your business is, which in my opinion, we all think our businesses are incredibly unique, and they are, right? But at the end of the day, they all have very similar overarching principles of doing our best to be profitable, doing our best for our employees, being as productive as possible, and purchase order, shipment, invoice. Doesn't matter what type of business you are, that's sort of the three stages. And even if you think, oh, it's a restaurant, it's different. The purchase order is when somebody comes and orders food. The shipment is when you drop the food off at their table. The invoice is when they pay. So they can always be broken down into those three steps. I want to do one more thing. I know we have to finish up a little in a couple of minutes. As I mentioned before, this tool DOS integrates seamlessly with your existing software. They've done an incredible job. There were a couple tools that they had not sort of are on this sheet, for example, or on this image, for example. I have Shopify, QuickBooks, Salesforce, MailChimp, and Gmail. We use Extensive for shipment. They hadn't done an integration with that before, but guess what? They did it, they figured it out, and now we're able to integrate all of our purchase orders and all of our inventory management from Extensive to our tool now, and we don't need to be in Extensive as much as we used to. And as I mentioned before, there's a ton of other tools out there that are not listed here that are listed on their website, but also even if it's not listed on their website, I'm sure it's something that they'd be able to at least reach out to the company and try to figure out how to integrate or create a workaround where then they could just be talking to the tool, and then the tool will spit back a couple of pieces of information that are important. But whether it's procurement, manufacturing, operations, order management, or finance and accounting, it brings it all together into the platform that we utilize now every morning, noon, and night. And obviously, as I mentioned before, Zach, our employee, super happy. So we're allowed to retain that talent, foster that career growth, lower that turnover, boost that productivity, help him get home at a reasonable time, and maybe not reach out to him on the Saturdays and the Sundays of the world, reduce the burnout and increase the focus on strategic goals. Because again, we are a small business. We can't really afford to lose the great employees that we have. And this was an internal project that we really needed to focus on this past year. And it's done wonders for the business and allowed a lot more just internal joy, which has actually translated into increased sales. So I can track the two between each other. After implementing the tool, we've been able, as I mentioned before, the AI handles the repetitive tasks. We're allowed to focus more on strategic activities. We develop that collaborative workflow. There's more capacity for new ideas, new specific products that we're developing, greater ownership and accountability of the process. So now that process, that purchase order process, which might have been, 4 or 5 different people before, that ownership and that specific swim lane that I was showing before is Zach's responsibility primarily, right? And they have that accountability factor too, which again helps from an employee retention standpoint. Even if you're not managing a person, you owning a process is probably more impactful for the business than managing 2 or 3 people, in my opinion. And we are able to sort of develop the skill set and allow for some external activities as well. Our order processing time has been reduced by 12 times, which has been incredibly impactful for us as a business. It allowed us to become a lot more efficient and allowed us to save more money as well too, which again goes to the bottom line of the business, which allows us to sort of plow that back. As I mentioned before, we don't have any external funding, as most small businesses don't. There is a good webinar coming up in a couple weeks on sort of that external small business funding, as Robert mentioned before. So that's something I'm going to be joining, because as we scale up, we do need to find some of those external factors and external support systems. But I'm confident that the technology that we have in place currently has allowed us to scale in a way where it would be attractive enough for either a venture capital firm or the Small Business Administration to want to take a look at us. So if anybody has any additional questions about the tool, about my experience, about anything with Spread the Love or anything else from an e-commerce or an automation standpoint, or wants to do a workflow specific one-by-one process audit, please reach out to me. I got my cell number down there. I have my personal Gmail as well. My email with Spread the Love is aloy@spreadthelovefoods.com. You could check us out on Amazon. Just put in organic peanut butter. We should be one of the top 2 ranking results as well. I don't know if we have any more. So I saw one question here: is the DOS system affordable? I can tell you, as a small business, we do under $5 million in revenue per year. We were not always at this size, right? They make it affordable for you. It's all about having that initial conversation. And yes, there are going to be some costs early on, but whatever system you use nowadays is not going to be free, I would say. And it is a system that what it costs for us as a team has already paid us back. The return has already paid us back pretty tremendously, just from an employee satisfaction standpoint. And then, as I said before, allowing us to free up that time of those manual processes where we don't do them anymore and we let the system do them. And then it allows us to look for more accounts and to go hunting and to go sales hunting and to do more conferences in person, to spend more time with the business, to reach out to existing customers, to sort of nurture those relationships as well, because we've kind of ignored that just by doing business as usual every day, order flow coming in. And as I said before, it's definitely something that I think is worth a conversation with the team. So I'd be happy to put people in touch if they reach out to me after the call. And they truly do their best from an implementation standpoint. So it's not like you're going to have to hire a consultant at $10,000 just to implement this, as you would with some other tools that are sort of similar in that way. So definitely something that's very affordable, in my opinion, for small to even mid-sized companies as well. I don't see any other questions on here. I know we're kind of approaching the time. Yes, the slides will be on the content library. And as I said before, I got my cell number down there. Shoot me a text if you want to set up some additional time to just have a chat about their tool or about another tool you might have heard of as well too, because they're definitely not the only ones in town, but they're the highest quality in my opinion, and provide the most opportunity for growth from small to mid-sized enterprise side of things. So again, appreciate everybody taking the time to listen today. And again, truly appreciate the opportunity from the Arizona Commerce Authority as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Eloy. Appreciate you being on, and it was great to hear a different use of AI. We normally talk about Chat GPT or Gemini or the other ones, and how to help type that letter better and so forth. But learning about some of the other AI
I love
tools out there.
ChatGPT. ChatGPT is great. It helps me a lot in my personal life. And but at the end of the day, it's something, how do we make ourselves more efficient? And I thought of that Ford example for something 100 years ago. And then I think of the Amazon example today, which, we all love Amazon from just the purchasing and a customer end of things. So they're leveraging the technology. Why not figure out a way for small businesses to leverage the technology too?
Yeah. Yeah, as we can make things more efficient in our processes and procedures. Again, like you mentioned, in the examples you use, we save money, save time. Time is money, so
Yeah.
we can use that
And
time better spent with other activities. So,
and making the employees happier too. That's really one that was like on the top of our list here. Obviously, the saving money is always at the front of our mind, but that was one thing where it's like, how do we keep people engaged? Because people do jump around quite a bit, and they might want to be at an Amazon and maybe not working at a Spread the Love, but at the same time, we want to make this. We can only do so much to make Spread the Love attractive from a business standpoint. We will never be Amazon at a size, from a size standpoint, but we're able to really become more attractive that way, I think, as a place to work and a place to build your career from the ground up.
yeah, we appreciate it. We don't have any new questions, so we will go ahead and wrap up a little bit early. But thank you for the great presentation. We're glad to have you on again, and we want to thank everybody for attending. We hope you had a great time with us, and we hope you have a great week. And we look forward to seeing you either on Thursday for our Lunch and Learn or next Tuesday for our normal boot camp presentation. Until then, have a great week. See you soon.
You guys
Bye.
later. Have a good one. Bye.